Most nights started with a simple plan: go to sleep earlier or stay up later on purpose and wake at a better time. But when the head hit the pillow, the mind refused the plan. It woke up. It started working. The body lay still, yet thoughts arrived in sharp bursts, unfinished tasks, tomorrow's worries, sudden ideas. Minutes stretched. The harder sleep got chased, the farther it seemed to move away. Bedtime turned into a test of will against alertness. Then morning came on schedule, no matter how the night went. Some people looked fine. Others felt foggy and blamed themselves. They tried earlier lights out, extra alarms, weekend catch-up. The pattern stayed stubborn, like the brain kept its own clock. A sleep schedule had not lived on the clock. It had lived in the mind as a repeating pattern, when sleepiness usually arrived, when alertness usually surged, and what the brain expected next. Bedtime looked like a decision, but the schedule acted like momentum. That pattern had been built from two quiet signals working together. Sleep drive rose the longer someone stayed awake, like pressure in a system. Timing set the window when the brain allowed that pressure to turn into sleep. When the window stayed closed, effort did not matter, and expectations sealed it. After enough repeated nights, the brain started to predict sleep at certain hours and wakefulness at others. It prepared the body ahead of time, making tiredness feel automatic or impossible. A schedule, then, shaped how awake a person felt before they chose. Some people reached for sleep early and woke up sharp before sunrise. Others hit their stride late, then struggled to feel human at dawn. That split had a name. It pointed to a built-in preference for timing, not effort. Chronotype described when the brain tended to place its strongest alertness, and when it expected sleep to come easily. It acted like an internal timetable. You could argue with it, but it usually kept returning to its own rhythm. That was why early bird and night owl were not just labels or lifestyles. They reflected a stable bias in brain timing. When schedules clashed with that bias, people did not simply feel stubborn, they felt out of sync. Two forces ran the timing. One acted like an internal clock, a daily prediction of when alertness should rise and fall. The other acted like a meter. The longer wakefulness lasted, the more pressure for sleep built. The clock did not care how hard the day felt. It followed its own schedule. Homeostatic pressure did not care what time it was. It only counted hours awake. Most days they lined up and sleep arrived easily. But sometimes they pulled in opposite directions. Sleep pressure climbed high, yet the clock still pushed alertness, keeping the mind active. The body felt heavy, thoughts stayed fast. That mismatch produced a familiar state, wired but tired. The brain did not just guess what time it was. It collected clues. Morning light told it that day had started, and darkness told it to power down. Those signals helped the mind place now on an internal map. Food added another timestamp. Regular meals hinted at when the body usually worked, rested, and recovered. Movement did the same. Activity meant it was safe and useful to stay alert. Stillness carried the opposite message. Social contact worked like a loud clock. Messages, meetings, and shared routines pushed the brain to treat certain hours as active hours. Over time, these cues stacked up. A schedule felt less like choice, more like biology answering signals. Many people tried to fix a late schedule by going to bed earlier. They climbed in at 10, turned out the light, and waited. But the internal clock still expected wakefulness, so sleep arrived late anyway. The plan looked simple. The body disagreed. That mismatch often got mistaken for sleep debt. They assumed more time in bed meant more recovery. But debt was about how long they stayed awake, not what the clock predicted. If bedtime moved without the clock moving, the extra hour became frustration, not sleep. Wake time changed the story because it reached into the whole day. Getting up earlier increased pressure to sleep that night, and it also shifted light, meals, and movement earlier. The morning felt harder at first, but it nudged the clock, not just the pillow. When the schedule shifted, the day did not simply slide with it. Attention drifted at strange moments. Easy tasks felt harder, then suddenly easier. The mind kept checking the time, as if it no longer trusted its own sense of now. Mood changed too, not always in big ways, but in sharp little tilts. Patience ran thin. Motivation arrived late. Things that usually felt neutral started to feel irritating or heavy. It resembled travel fatigue, but the body stayed in the same place. Thought speed also warped. Some hours felt slow and foggy, like wading through warm water. Then a burst of clarity hit at the wrong time, close to bedtime. The person lay there alert, carrying a mild internal jet lag into the night. Then another clock took over. Work start times and school bells set the day, no matter when the brain felt ready. People woke by alarm, not by sleepiness fading. The calendar demanded morning performance and the body often arrived late. When that mismatch repeated, it stopped feeling like a schedule problem and started feeling personal. Morning grogginess looked like laziness. Late-night energy looked like bad discipline. A steady chronotype got judged through a timetable and the label stuck. Over time, the external clock trained habits and even self-talk. People pushed coffee, skipped breakfast, or napped at odd hours to survive the day. Nights became catch-up time, mornings became punishment, and identity got built around a mismatch they never chose. People often said they wanted to change their sleep schedule, but that phrase hid 3 different targets. One was timing, when sleep happened. Another was duration, how many hours the body still demanded. The third was quality, how deep and steady sleep became. Timing could shift, like sliding the whole night earlier or later, but it usually moved in small steps. Duration proved stubborn. Someone could fall asleep earlier and still wake after the same number of hours, or sleep longer and still feel unfinished. Quality added another twist. A person could keep the same bedtime and wake time, yet sleep became lighter, broken and unrefreshing. Or the clock stayed late, but sleep finally deepened. Changing a schedule never meant changing one thing. That bedtime fight had looked like willpower versus laziness. It had actually played out like a negotiation. One system predicted wakefulness on a timetable. Another stacked sleep pressure like weight. A third watched the world for cues. When the predictive clock expected alertness, the mind stayed busy, even in a dark room. When sleep pressure had not built enough, drowsiness never arrived. And when cues sent mixed messages, bright light, late meals, the internal map placed now at the wrong hour. So the challenge had not been about forcing sleep into a slot. It had been about identifying which system ran the show at that moment. Change became less a command and more a shift in signals, pressure and timing working together.